I'm going to spend a little bit of time just going through about 5 or 6 slides or so that hopefully will give you an idea as to where you're going and the kinds of things that you need to think about when you're starting in on the research projects that will consume you, hopefully, for the next 7 months, 8 months, something along those lines, as we move through this course and the next. Did you have something that you wanted to add in, Elizabeth, at this point, or shall I just take it away?
Take it away. I'll jump in. Don't worry.
Okay. In fact, I'd like you to invite all of you to jump in by either raising your hand or just coming on the mic, interrupting me, and let's get into the discussion rather than making it all about me, because I certainly don't want to dominate. So some ideas that I put together. So research is, and there's some material on the internet that actually talks about these kinds of pieces, and there's lots of papers about research, etc. And I would invite you to take a look at some of the pieces that I've already posted into the Blackboard 4200 course, because there's lots of good stuff that you need to take a look at. And I'll make specific reference to at least one of those papers as we're moving through. Anyways, research is essentially a systematic way of trying to make sense of the world itself. One of the pieces that really intrigued me was when I heard Bill Hunter, some of you may actually know about Bill, talk at a symposium that we put together for the Faculty of Education a couple of years ago. This is when Bill was still the, I know that Elizabeth knows the guy just a little bit. He was still the dean at the time, and he started talking about the fact that education, or his conception of education, is places it in sort of the same kind of time frame or the same kind of orientation that the medical profession was about 150 years ago or so. The medical profession at the time of Semmelweis, who was working in Vienna at the time as a Hungarian or a Magyar, and those of you who may know that kind of terminology, Hungarians were not well respected by the establishment in Vienna, at least in the hospital in Vienna. And as a result, if you have an individual who's making a suggestion to the surgeons, it may not be particularly well taken. Semmelweis was noting the incidence of all kinds of infection amongst, he was a gynae obstetrics guy, gynecologist, obstetrician. And he was noting that there was all kinds of incidents of fevers and infections on not only the parts of the young children who were being born, but also on the mothers as well. And he was trying to see what was the correlation between the source of the infection and the incidence of the infection. His suggestion was that maybe it was the surgeons who were actually the source of infections. And he suggested a minor change in their procedures. His suggestion was that a surgeon who would be attending to the birth of a child, etc., should at least wash their hands once per day. The given practice at the time was that they would not wash at all. You got to remember that this is at the time when it was conceived that ill airs or spirits would be infecting and being the cause of major infections and all that kind of stuff. They had no conception that it was actually bacteria or viruses that were actually the cause of all of these things. So septic procedures was not the name of the game. Anyways, Semmelweis was drummed out of the hospital because of his suggestion that surgeons wash at least once a day. And it's kind of interesting how these kinds of pieces come to they come around full circle eventually. The idea of Semmelweis is that he actually went on to serve in a number of hospitals in a variety of settings in Europe, and eventually he was appointed back to the same hospital in Vienna, and he was appointed as the head surgeon or the head of surgery, or however they actually phrased it in Austria at the time. That was he was actually justified on the basis that he had gone out and done systematic work looking at the link between septic conditions or the cleanliness of surgeons and the incidence of fevers and infections, etc. So essentially it comes down to this whole idea of systemic ways or systematic ways of collecting data and then doing the analysis allows us to come to other insights that may not be possible if you're just trying to make leaps of intellect as you're going along. So it's on that basis that we actually need to take a look in education, or at least the idea that Bill Hunter was presenting was that we need to be very systematic in terms of the development of knowledge and our understandings of the interactions between individuals, particularly when we're making use of digital technologies, and that should become the basis of the research that we are doing. So let's get rid of the tendency of teachers and educators to go into a classroom, close the door, do their own thing, and pay no attention to what the literature is talking about, and don't contribute to the literature either. So both of those pieces are very, very much what we're interested in this particular course and the following course. So making sense of the world in a systematic way so that we can progress what education is all about and progress our understanding of education. We're also attempting to advance the production of knowledge, and I think I've talked about that a little bit. If you want to look at it from a different perspective, and this is probably an empirical kind of view, research is about the posing of conjectures and inviting refutations, a la the conversations that we've all had about Popper. So it's this whole idea of falsifiability. We've got a huge list of hypotheses, and what we're actually trying to do is cross the hypotheses that are not plausible off of the list. So conjectures and refutations. Research is also inquiry, trying to find out about whatever the topic is. And it's an exploration of the ideas and the details that surround them. All right. Any questions about that conception of what research is? By the way, I'm not trying to be comprehensive. I'm not trying to do everything that research is all about, but should give you an idea as to what we're actually about in terms of the research projects that you're going to be undertaking. Comments and or questions?
I'm just going to jump in just for a little bit. The other piece I would add to the bottom of that slide is that research is fun. It's actually highly addictive, and you're going to have to watch it because you'll get in there and you'll get in deep and you'll get so down a little rabbit hole that it's going to be really hard to come back out and look at the big view. And so one of the fun parts of this journey, of course, is investigating. And then one of commonly a difficult part of the journey is zooming back out far enough so that you can then write this whole thing up in a way that someone who did not do what you did not go as deep, can actually read what you wrote and say, okay, I understand what they did. I understand why they did it. I understand what they found, and given the backing that they used from the literature, I can see that they kind of got some depth in the field. They may not agree with what you find. They may not agree with the perception or the way that you have interpreted it back, but at the very least, they will understand the process. So I think, James, too much data can slow you down. Too big of a question can slow you down. You really want to fine tune your question. As Jessica said, trying to save the world, you have, arguably a lifetime to do that. Let's not try to do it in this particular course, in this particular thesis. Let's try to just truncate it down, and this is the hard part, to something that's very narrow in scope, very applicable, on point, and we'll get into that around when you're crafting your question, and that you can do in a tight, nice area. It's hard to do that. As Katie mentioned, there's so many things that you're interested in. You want to do all this great stuff, and there is lots of time to do that. And so I think one thing that I would just ask you to tuck back in the back of your minds is that this research project is the end product for your degree. It is not the last thing you will ever do in research. So put all the ideas down, stick them on sticky notes. In fact, some of the groups I work with, we actually do, you have to come up with 50 research questions and submit them, and then you have to pick one and narrow it down. But keep the other 49 because you may come back to them, you may do it later. I mean, part of, I think, what Roland is saying here and what Bill Hunter, my read of Bill Hunter's comments, is that it really is in part our responsibility as educators in this profession, in this field, to write about what's happening in a way that's systematic, that's not just me and the mouse in my pocket talking, but that has some data to back it. So there'll be lots and lots of time to do the other 49 ideas, but for this course, for this project, for your degree, let's just pick one. Keep it tight, keep it narrow, and do it well. And it'll be something that you can then use as a springboard for other ideas. So I just wanted to try to scope that a little bit. I know as we go through this course, because of the PBL approach, because there is no research methods course in your program, that's what this course in part is all about, right? It's about you getting into the research, getting into the literature, digging around, figuring out what method will work, figuring out the theoretical frameworks, all those pieces. And we're going to be talking about some of that in our seminar. But as Roland mentioned, like all of the seminars, these are jumping off points, right? So this is, I feel like I'm in this little cave, sorry. I just got distracted by my picture. And then I want to look at my porthole at the research. So back to what I was saying. So this is really why the mentor role is so great, because together you can be poking and prodding and looking at the different aspects of what goes into research. So the seminars will kickstart that, and then you can continue the conversation with the work groups, with the mentors, and of course with Roland and I as we go. Now, of course, that I've rambled on, please jump in if there's questions or comments.
We've both got that dread disease, Elizabeth, verbal diarrhea.
I know.
And it spreads like wildfire. You watch. These guys will be talking in a couple minutes, too.